You know when you check your bank account and see a massive looming debt, like a huge mortgage or a mountain of student loans, it really kind of defines you.
Yeah, it dictates everything, which you can buy, where you can live.
Exactly. And, how much you stress on just a random Tuesday. But imagine logging in one morning and seeing not just a zero balance, but a deposit so massive it practically makes you royalty.
That is quite the mental image.
Right. Well, that wild shift from ultimate debt to ultimate wealth is exactly the terrain we are exploring today in our deep dive into a short but incredibly dense theological text called Talking About Jesus. And just to be super clear right up front, we aren't here to preach or, endorse its religious views.
Right. We're just looking at this purely as an educational exercise
Yeah,
because the psychological and philosophical framework it presents about grace and identity is just really thought-provoking.
it really is. So let's jump right in. The foundational concept driving this entire text is something it calls the wondrous exchange.
Yeah, the wondrous exchange. And to understand how this works philosophically, you really have to look at the logic of substitution. The text presents humanity as carrying this massive deficit of guilt and sin.
Like the ultimate bad credit score.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, the sinless Christ holds a perfect surplus of righteousness.
So the mechanics of this aren't just a creditor magically erasing a ledger with a keystroke, right? The creditor is actually paying that staggering balance with his own life.
Yes, it is a literal transfer of liabilities and assets.
Mm-hmm.
The text uses very deliberate contrast to show this substitution. Like it says he took on rejection so you could receive acceptance.
Oh, wow. That is a stark contrast.
It is. It goes on to say he suffered so you might be healed. He died so you might live. The punishment and the reward literally swap places.
And the text is adamant that this grace is entirely unearned, isn't it?
Completely unearned. You cannot deserve it.
Which, that totally changes the psychology of the person receiving it. Because if you didn't earn this perfect standing through your own performance, you logically can't unearn it through your failures.
Precisely. Your core identity detaches from your flaws. It anchors itself completely in this completed transaction.
And that completed transaction triggers a pretty radical upgrade in status.
A massive upgrade. Because the debt is paid, the reader transitions from being a condemned outsider to a citizen of heaven, a child of God, and an heir with Christ.
Wait, an heir? Like actual royalty?
Yeah, the source argues that when this figure's glory is finally revealed, you are actually meant to be crowned and reign alongside him for eternity.
Okay, an eternal destiny as royalty is a beautiful concept for the afterlife, but how does that actually change a Tuesday morning commute? Because the text commands the reader to live as a true king right now and to wield power.
It does say that, yes.
And I have to push back on this a little bit. Usually when we hear about wielding power or ruling, it implies arrogance or dominance or, stepping on people to get your way.
Right, the classic worldly view of power.
Exactly. So how does that fit with a philosophy of totally unearned grace?
Well, that apparent contradiction is actually the entire point. The text completely flips the worldly definition of power on its head.
Oh, really? How so?
True authority in this framework isn't about subjugating other people at all. It is an internal conquest. The kingdom you are ruling over is actually your own destructive desires.
I see. So the authority granted here is explicitly meant for humility, righteousness, and love.
Exactly.
Ah, the logic is clicking for me now. Because your ultimate identity and worth are already perfectly secure, your ego isn't constantly threatened by the world.
You don't have to defend yourself constantly.
Right. So instead of needing the power to crush an opponent or win an argument, you suddenly have the power to actually forgive them or, the power to love someone when it is incredibly difficult.
You nailed it. You are no longer fighting for status, so you can wield the power to overcome temptation and stand firm in truth. And the text notes, this internal conquest isn't achieved through sheer white-knuckled willpower either.
It comes from somewhere else.
Yeah, it comes through the life of Christ actively working within the individual.
So the text concluding call is basically a total rejection of that old debtor mindset we talked about at the start.
Yes, exactly. If the debt is gone, you shouldn't walk around acting bound or fearful or defeated by temporary struggles.
You're supposed to walk with the confident purpose of a co-heir.
It is really an invitation to elevate your perspective above the immediate chaos, just fully knowing your ultimate destiny is absolutely secure.
Which leaves us with a pretty profound question to chew on as we wrap up.
I'd love to hear it.
Well, if someone truly internalized this belief, like if they woke up every single day believing their core identity was perfectly secure, completely unearned, and rooted in eternal royalty, How might that completely eradicate their daily anxieties?
That is a huge thought.
Right. And furthermore, how radically would that change the way they treat their absolute worst enemies?